Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Inside Movies Galore, where I am here in the room with a guy named Chad once again. And from what I understand, we're going to be talking about a movie that recently came out maybe a week ago called Rampage, from what I understand, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It's Rampage. I actually enjoyed the movie. I didn't get bored with it at all anytime throughout the film.
Alrighty. And it stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson from what I understand. But before we get into a little bit of a review, I understand that there were quite a few toys and merchandise that came from the film that that you'd like to share with us, actually, because you know, some films don't like do go all that lengths to create like characters for some of their different characters, you know. And why don't you tell us what you got there?
All right, well, I'm going to do this a little bit different. Now, these three pieces here that we're starting off with, this here is a from the old video game. In the old video game, they actually showed it in the background of a few clips of that film. This was a video game where you basically had these three individuals, a wolf, a gorilla, and a gator, crocodile, if you will, go around and just smash up buildings. It was like a cheesy, fun video game. It was back in the 80s. I know you're a young man, so you probably don't remember the video game.
Actually, I remember. What I remember, I remember The Simpsons coming out with their version of Rampage, where there were Simpsons characters as well. So it was a continuing game series to me. I think it was called like Bartzilla or something like that. I'm not exactly sure of the title, but I remember going over to a friend's place and playing it till all hours of the morning. And I had relatively a lot of fun with that game. So I'm not sure whether I played the game per se, but I have played the original Donkey Kong. So I on Atari. So I'm fairly familiar with the Rampage world, so to speak. So, but what are these characters here, and what are they? What are they exactly doing? What can they do?
These ones here are basically some super stretch ones, kind of like the Stretch Armstrong, and
okay.
They all make some noises when you pull them and touch them. You have Lizzie that was in the video game. This is George. He was in the video game. He was basically the big star or the fan favorite, Rock's pet, if you will. And then you just had Ralph. And I don't know that they really called him these names. Basically, they just called Ralph was the wolf, and Rampage, the star of the Rampage, is right here, and that was George. He looks a little bit different than the movie, and I'll show you that later when I go through the movie review.
Okay. Just so you know, folks, this movie was directed by Brad Payton with the writers Ryan Engel and Carlton Cuse, and a few other writers, evidently. So he is known for doing or directing San Andreas and Journey to the Mysterious Island, which was the sequel to The Mysterious Island, or the Journey to the Center of the Earth, I believe. And these also starred The Rock in them. So bear in mind that he is already familiar with The Rock as an actor. So going into this film as an action piece and having it be somewhat of a cult, you know, phenomenon that started in the 80s. Going into that, bearing in mind, how did you what were your thoughts of the film? This was now it came out a week ago, but you were able to see it a week later, correct?
Yeah, I just saw it yesterday, and
Okay.
the movie kind of starts out here. You see Rock here, and Rock is you know, the ladies love him. They refer to that into the film. They're at the San Diego Zoo, and this is his buddy George. And now
Okay.
George and him, they like have fun. You know, they can touch each other, play around. They commute through sign language, and The Rock had actually saved him as his mother and family was killed when he was a little baby. Now, the story goes that Rock was actually in the military and he was fighting the Contras over over these animals because they would slaughter the animals over there, and then, you know, like they would take their paws or their hands and they would make ashtrays out of them. So he saved him as a little baby, and you know, they get along real great and can touch and feel each other. And then he shows how George, his buddy here, has kind of a weird sense of humor, because George does one of these and flips him off in there, and you know, it gets a big laugh in the crowd there. So that's how the movie starts off.
Okay. And what can you say about the storyline? Can you tell us a little bit more about what went on after the beginning part?
Yeah, so the beginning happens there, and then while that's going on, simultaneously, you have like a spaceship flying around. Now, this isn't the exact spaceship because this is a Hot Wheels car or a Matchbox that is from Guardians of the Galaxy, but I'm just using that to represent the spaceship there. Now, the spaceship is out there because they're doing some scientific studies that the government told them they couldn't do any longer. And then something goes wrong, right? It's a movie, something always goes wrong. So now the spaceship, it blows up, okay? And the scientist on the ship, she goes down with what's left of the ship. However, she saved their research. Now their research fell out into different pieces. So one of the boxes happened to be where you had this gator at.
Okay.
Another box happened to be where you had the wolf at.
Okay.
And the other one happened to be where George was, the San Diego Zoo. So that's where we're at now. It's still pretty early in the film, and you don't actually see these characters right away. These two ways. But this is, you know, the gorilla hangs out, the wolf does wolf shit, right, in the forest, and the gator does his shit in the water. You know what I mean? Everything's cool. That's how their life works. Start getting mad scientists involved, bad things happen. So the next day when The Rock shows up to work, guess what? Whoa, George is way bigger. Okay, now he doesn't know if that's really George. George went ahead and he killed a grizzly bear, right? George isn't like that. George is like a gentle giant. Now that he's even bigger, he can't even feel what's going on in his mind. So that's where The Rock is. Now he's trying to figure everything out. He goes ahead and they go ahead and lock George up.
Okay.
So they put him in the cage and surround him with the cage. Well, the cage can't open because George is now bigger. So he throws the cage away, and George is on the loose. So what happens? Something else happens. They see a wolf. The wolf is there, right? But it's not a regular wolf. The wolf is now bigger, right? So the wolf is going, and he's kind of like.
Now is that one of the merchandise that they made for the film?
Yes, it is.
That wolf?
Yes, it is.
That is one badass wolf.
Yep. So the wolf gets bigger now. So not only is he doing, they catch him on the satellite feed. So in comes the military, right? Now the military is there. And what does the military do? They want to kill shit, right? So you got these military dudes all in there, all kinds of military guys, right? They're shooting at them, right? But what does this wolf do? He opens his mouth and just starts chomping them. right? Stomping them, killing them. Guess what? There's no more military. The military's gone. Now you just got this badass wolf here, right?
Okay.
All right. So now they go ahead and say, remember the alligator was just doing alligator shit? Well, guess what? Now he's a big ass alligator that just tears shit up. Oh, that's Rampage in the background. You can hear some noise. Now this alligator scares people too, right? Turns out this alligator is a lot tougher than the wolf. And we'll get to that a little bit later.
And just so you know, folks, I have one too. So they're all over the place. Anyways, go ahead.
Okay, so now, you know, we got a bunch of stuff going on. We hear the signals. The Rock, they're trying to get the Rock. The military come in, they arrest the Rock. He's not too happy about it, but he goes in peace because he's with his buddy George, the gorilla. And that was George there. But now they see how big these are. Well, guess what? George has to grow also. So now you got George here, and George is growing.
So
right?
George is actually several different sizes.
That is correct. And it really comes into play how George has grown up over time. Because him and the Rock are still friends, even though his mind is shot from that drug.
What's interesting is the different figurines that they came out with to show the advancement in enlargement. Yeah, that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
So seeing the marketability that this movie has actually created is actually kind of phenomenal in a way. So, what happened next, and what were your thoughts of the film in its entirety?
Well, the film was really going along really well. It didn't drag at all. I was expecting a little bit more action that there has, but they were shooting missiles, right? So you had missiles flying out and shit, right? The choppers coming in, the choppers firing shit out, right? So, right, you got all your action there. And guess what? The Rock, he was in the military. So you know what that means? That means The Rock knows how to fly. So The Rock goes and jumps in there because he has to escape from being arrested. So he jumps in the plane and he actually fits. So he flies around, starts shooting stuff up because he had to escape. It's really cool. But it's cool how much stuff he knows that he can do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, everything's getting damaged, right? Here's a bus that is smashed in half. They're coming around, jumping on it. Things are shooting. People are dying. There's all kinds of people, and they're trying to evacuate Chicago. Chicago's a big city. You can't really evacuate Chicago. So what happens? The Rock. Whoa, The Rock. The Rock is with some other chick. I don't have an action figure of her. Not sure that they made one. She was a black female, and she was pretty hot. So she's with The Rock. She was a scientist that used to work for the film. Not the film, but the company there, the scientific company, and she knew that they were dirty. So she's with The Rock, and while they're climbing up this building, while all these creatures are trying to get back to Chicago because they can hear this loud pitched noise going over the sound waves. And it's bothering them, so they have to get there. So they get to the building, and while they get to the building, they're just destroying stuff.
Okay.
Now, he sees George, and he's trying to communicate with George, but George really isn't having it. So,
did you get any kind of a sense that this film was trying to model after films like Godzilla or things of that, or movies of that nature?
I can see where you would think that, but to me, they kind of went with the video game, and then anytime that you have things, you're going to bring the military in, like some unexplained stuff. The military is always involved. The military has, boats. Sometimes they want to show up on little boats and stuff. They got guns on boats. Then they always set up barricades, right? Barbed wire fence. These are things that you see in movies, also in real life. All this barbed wire fence.
Okay.
So while they're there, The Rock sets it up. It's pretty cool how they do it. George is out of his mind, and it's time to feed. So they go ahead and shove this antidote into this woman, and then George opens up, pulls his head back, and swallows the woman. Well, guess what? The antidote is inside. It doesn't shrink him down, but it fixes what's going on inside so he won't get any bigger. So,
Okay.
so he swallows the antidote, and it takes 10 minutes. So there's a lot of action going on. More bombs fly in, right?
And what happened to the woman? Just get swallowed?
Yeah, she got swallowed and died. He was a bitch, so I didn't give a shit, So these animals just still destroying the city, right? Now George is still destroying stuff too because it hasn't taken effect yet. However, it does take effect. Now, guess what? The Rock is on top of the building, right? But there is a chopper there. So the chopper is damaged. The Rock can't really get it off the ground, but he can try to stop from crashing it. So when the building falls, he's trying to hover over the building just while it falls. Kind of cool, kind of silly, but guess what? The Rock's the star. The Rock lives. So the building crashes down. The Rock survives. And guess what? George is starting to recognize now. So they also had Rock in a couple different outfits. Here's another figure of the Rock. Came with another piece.
Cool.
So George is figuring out, hey, I know what's going on. So you know how it goes. A friend saves a friend's life. The Rock saved his life. And then when George is getting better, he figures out he needs to kill the wolf, right? Because the wolf is bad. So he kills the wolf, right? The wolf dies. Stomp the wolf, kick the wolf, whatever. He's dead. Oh, guess what? He's not dead. He rips the wolf's head off. So now the wolf is really dead. Okay, now the Rock has a gun. He had a bunch of guns to choose from. But he just had one. I'm not going to show it here. But he had one that he was firing off big rounds.
Okay.
And then, guess what? He's in trouble. The gator is going to get him. So guess who sees this? George. So George takes something and stabs the gator in the eye. And guess what? He's not totally dead. Then George goes ahead and flips him around. Almost dead. George ends up getting stabbed by falling. Something pierces his chest. So the Rock is almost dead, but not yet. And then here comes Lizzie again. Guess what? Almost. No. George is there to save the day. Boom. The Rock is shooting missiles at it. But guess what? George got hurt bad. So, sometimes movies get sad. George just lays there and is at the end of George. The Rock, he dusts himself up, He comes over, he sees George's buddy, and he's like, George, are you okay? And George's eyes are closing. Silence, maybe a few tears in the audience. And then
what?
Guess what? George flips him off and says, hey, I got a sense of humor again. And George is actually okay. Now, the two friends are back together again, and off they go to live their lives. So I think the movie was really cool. It was supposed to be an action flick, and it was. We went through some funny parts, right? George flipping people off a couple times. Kind of sad when he thought he was dying. A little drama in there at the scientific, with the scientists and the building stuff. But, it's a summer movie. I had a lot of fun with it, and the toys are cool.
Awesome. And I think that the toys were actually relatively more cooler, to collect because there There have been some from the game. There have been some from the movie, and you know, I even like I said, I have the gator that came out myself, and I have to say that that's a really badass looking gator. You know, it's got like spikes on it, and you know, it looks badass. You know, and that's
yeah, they're really cool, man. Now this same company that made these actually made the King Kong, and the King Kong looks real close to this also. Not a big variance in the King Kong figure from Skull Island, because I also have that figure. Now I know a lot of people like to keep their toys, you know, in the packages and that. I actually prefer to open them. Plus, when you open them, you got more room. And the way a lot of things are packaged, like this gator here, that tail is not on there. That tail is in the top of your package there. Now, if that's the figure you got there, the top part of the tail is in the top part of that box.
Really?
Yeah, and I think it looks better. Like if you pull your box up, now either you got the smaller one with the army figure set in it, or if you have the bigger one, this tail is in two pieces. If you see in the top of your box there, it cuts off here, and then you just snap it in to the back side there. Yeah, these figures are really cool, and they were really cheap. I was surprised how cheap the figures were.
Yeah, when I picked mine up, mine was $15 at Walmart. So
yeah, they were 15, and then the smaller ones were $9.99. And then I paid $20 for this Big George. It's pretty cool though.
All righty. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening, and hopefully you enjoyed this little reenactment. There are definitely a few spoilers, but I enjoyed it, and I'm sure that a guy named Chad enjoyed sharing some of his toys with us. So thank you once again for coming on. Appreciate it. Did you enjoy yourself? Are you enjoying giving him a penis?
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Sometimes these figures come to life.
Well, there's the secret of Morning Wood, everyone. In any case, stay tuned for more reviews that are coming on this channel as the post for this. Septum Sim versus the World is now an affiliate of Inside Movies Galore, so we have some reviews coming out for that. I'm sure there will be future reviews with a guy named Chad, so stay tuned. Next on the list is I saw a movie just recently that was a musical, so check out my review of The Greatest Showman next. In any case, ladies and gentlemen, definitely check out Rampage. It is certainly to be action-filled, and hopefully there are more movies possibly in the future dealing with this film. I certainly want to check it out myself. And you might even see a review of my own on this channel of the film once it comes to DVD. I'm more of a once the film comes to some kind of physical form, doing things about a film then. So anyways, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a pleasure again. Chad, why don't you do something horny?
What are you talking about? I don't do these things. Woo! What do you mean, buddy?
All righty, ladies and gentlemen, I must leave this madhouse before it gets too much. Looks like George is going on a rampage. In any case, catch you guys later, and stay tuned for more.